Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag for 2024. I think I've done this tag almost every year that I've been on here. I should go and dig them up and make a playlist or something. I wonder if that would be interesting to go back and look at. But this is a BookTube classic, y'all. We're halfway through the year. I waited till it was early July to do this, and it's a great time to take a look back at what I've been reading for the first half of the year. What were some highs? What were some lows? What am I still looking forward to for the second half of the year? Those are all things we're going to talk about, so let's go ahead and dive in. For the majority of these questions, I tried to limit myself to one or two responses. There's a couple of exceptions, and I tried not to talk about the same book for multiple prompts. So there are some questions where I could have talked about a different book, but I decided to use it for something else. Hopefully that all makes sense, but it's a fun opportunity to talk about books that I've been reading and really loving. Question number 1. What is the best book you have read so far in 2024? For this question, I decided to go with the book that I feel like I've been recommending the most and kind of hyping to other people. It's really good. It's one of quite a number of books that are amazing that I loved that made it on my favorites list, got a 6-star rating from me. But this one is indie published, and I swear somebody needs to pick it up for traditional publishing. It is my favorite romance that I've read so far this year, and that is Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. This was available as an audio influencer copy from Labor FM several months ago, and I was like, ooh, this sounds kind of interesting. Let me go check out some Goodreads reviews. And I saw that Ashley read it last year from Bookish Realm and loved it. It was one of her favorite books. I saw some other people really loved it, so I was like, done, easy. This was so good. So good. It was the perfect amount of sort of juicy, messy drama, truly romantic, and this romance that was so beautiful where all the conflict was external to the relationship, and I am a fan of external conflict in a romance. So the premise of this romance is that it follows a woman who is the maid of honor in her sister's destination wedding, but her sister is marrying her ex. Obviously, there's already going to be some drama there. She's just trying to get through it. Her sister is being a bridezilla, and while they're there the week before the wedding, she makes a deal with one of the groomsmen that they'll have kind of a hookup situation, but just for that week, no strings attached. He is already kind of falling for her, but he's like, it's fine, it'll just be no strings attached. And y'all, I mean, it's very sexy, but also the way he takes care of her and treats her like the queen that she is so great. Meanwhile, she's dealing with all of this external drama with the wedding situation, and they're falling for each other. It's so good. I loved it. So that one I feel like I've been pushing on a lot of people just because not as many people have heard of it. So I'm gonna say that's the best book, definitely the best romance I've read so far in the year. Question 2, what is the best sequel you've read in 2024? And this is another one that made my favorites list. I was kicking myself for taking so long to read it. That is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This was so good. One of the best sequels. I really liked Six of Crows. I especially liked the characters. I'm gonna be a hard sell on a heist story, and so that element was just okay for me in the first book, and I assumed Crooked Kingdom would be more of the same. It's really not. It's got a lot more local politics going on, and it's much more character driven. It was incredible. It made me cry. It made me laugh. It does such good character development. I loved this. Hands down the best sequel. I know it came out a long time ago. I'm late to the party, but I finally read it, and I'm so glad that I did. Question 3, what's a new release you haven't read yet but want to? There are many, but I'm going to limit myself to 2 answers for this. The first is One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware, just because I always read Ruth Ware. She is one of the few thriller authors that is an auto-buy for me. I know she's not everyone's jam, but her writing typically works really well for me. I don't even know that much about what this is about. I think it's some kind of like a vacation thing. I guess I should look. Let's see. So it follows 5 couples trapped on a storm-swept island as a killer stalks among them. Yeah, Sounds fun. I like her writing. I like the way she does characters. So I do plan to read this sometime, and I have it. I just haven't read it. And then the other one is Mirrored Heavens by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a series finale to a series that I absolutely love that is fantasy and just really great. So I plan to read this one quite soon as well. There are many others, but we're going to go with those two. Let's move on to question 4. What is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? I couldn't resist this one. I have 3 answers that I'm going with, and these are all books that I have pre-ordered. I'm very excited for. First, coming out this summer is The Seventh Veil of Salome by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. The easy answer for me, she is an auto-buy author. Anything she writes, I will read. I love her books. Even her historical fiction, which y'all know I am a hard sell on historical fiction. It's following a Latina actress in Hollywood. I don't even know. Do I know what exactly it's about? I just know she's great. I love what she writes. I'm gonna look it up. Here we go. A young woman wins the role of a lifetime in a film about a legendary heroine, but the real drama is behind the scenes of this sumptuous historical epic. It's set in 1950s Hollywood, and while every actress wants to play Salome, the star-making role in a big-budget movie about the legendary woman whose story has inspired artists since ancient times. So when the film's mercurial director casts Vera Larios, an unknown Mexican ingenue, in the lead role, she quickly becomes the talk of the town and an object of envy. You know, drama amongst actresses in the golden age of Hollywood. I'm sure it's going to be great. I always love her books. Really excited for that one. I'm also really looking forward to An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. This is like dark academia, gothic horror, and I think it's sapphic as well. Her books typically are, and I love all of those things. Those are major buzzwords for me. I also know I like her writing a lot, so I am very excited about this. A student will find that the hardest lessons sometimes come outside the classroom in this stunning dark academia novel from the acclaimed author of The Year of the Witching and House of Hunger. Lennon Carter's life is falling apart. Then she gets a mysterious phone call inviting her to take the entrance exam for Drayton College, a school of magic hidden in a secret pocket of Savannah. Lennon has been chosen because, like everyone else at the school, she has the innate gift of persuasion, the ability to wield her will like a weapon, using it to control others, and in rare cases, matter itself. After passing the test, Lennon begins to learn how to master her devastating and unsettling power. But despite persuasion's heavy toll on her body and mind, she is wholly captivated by her studies, by Drayton's lush, moss-draped campus, and by her brilliant classmates. But even more captivating is her charismatic advisor, Dante, who both intimidates and enthralls her. Yikes. So yeah, this sounds very interesting. Really excited for this. Maybe it's not sapphic. Most of her books are, but regardless, looking forward to it. Lastly, I'm going to say The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri. This is another series finisher of a series I've been loving. It's a sapphic political fantasy series that is drawing on the history and mythology of South Asia and has some interesting speculative elements to it. Or as the author likes to say, it's about morally gray lesbians tearing down an empire. It's really good. I don't know how she's gonna end it. I don't know if it's gonna be a happy ending, but I'm sure it's gonna be great. Question 5. What has been your biggest disappointment this year? And I have 3 of them. I'll start with the one that was least disappointing. Well, I don't know. They were all pretty disappointing. This one I just didn't rate as low because it's a perfectly okay book, just not what I was hoping for. And that is The Glass House by Emily St. John Mandel. I was very highly anticipating this because I adored Sea of Tranquility. I really liked Station 11 or The Glass House, Glass Hotel. And The Glass Hotel, did I say Glass House? It's The Glass Hotel. The Glass Hotel is set in the same universe, so I was expecting it to also be a new favorite, and it was just okay for me. The writing is still beautiful. Her writing is great, and it's the only thing that made me not actively dislike the book because I do think the way that she tells stories is excellent. I just did not care about the story she was telling in this book or what the characters were doing. So this was a bit of a disappointment for me. It's a fine book, just not what I was looking for. And then the other 2 are ones that I read towards the beginning of the year, so I know I've talked about them before. but they are still up there as two of my most disappointing books because I was really looking forward to them. One of them I even pre-ordered and they just did not work for me. So the first one is Hunt on Dark Waters by Katie Robert. This is the first book in her kind of portal fantasy pirate series. On paper it sounded like something I'd be into. In practice, I just did not vibe with it. I love the Dark Olympus series. I often really like books by Katie, but this did not work for me at all. I found it to be kind of boring. I found the characters to be flat. I wasn't invested in the romance. The world building was just okay. It was a disappointment. So I'm gonna stick with the Dark Olympus series. If you had a better experience, I'm happy for you. It just wasn't my thing. And then the other one that was disappointing was An Education and Malice by S.T. Gibson. I was so bummed about this because I was like, yes, dark academia and sapphic vampires? Absolutely, this sounds right up my alley. But I just thought it was really boring for the most part. I think the later part of the book picked up and got more interesting, but the first more than half of the book was painfully slow and boring to me. And I just found the writing hard to get into. I did not care about the characters. It was kind of repetitive. I wanted something that was going to be really atmospheric and really suck me in, and it took so long to get any sense of real atmosphere or caring about what was going on. And, you know, there was a part, maybe 2/3 of the way through the book, where I was like, okay, this is great, maybe I'm gonna end up loving this, and then the ending happened and I didn't like the ending. So, this was not for me. Again, your mileage may vary. Some people have liked this better than I did, but I was not really a fan. Question 6, what was your biggest surprise this year? And I have 2 books to talk about for this. The first one was a surprise because I would not have picked up this book if it wasn't for a book club. I did not get on well with the debut novel from this author, but I actually ended up loving his latest book, and that is The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. I read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle before it came out, and I did not like it. His second book, reviews weren't great, plus it didn't really appeal to me. This one I probably wouldn't have picked up except that it was picked for the Blades and Bodice Rippers book club, and so I grabbed an audio review copy from NetGalley, and it was so good. Which is funny because the reviews from most people of this one have been much lower than the reviews of his debut. My suspicion, though, is because this one leans much more heavily into dystopian science fiction, whereas The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle has a speculative element to it, but it's much more minor. It's not taking over the story, whereas this is very, like, sci-fi forward kind of story, but I really liked it. The other thing that I think is interesting is the narrator for it is an AI, and I think that works really well. It's smart. It kept me guessing till the very end. I found it to be very propulsive. I liked it a lot. So if you like a blend of sci-fi and murder mystery, I would maybe go check this out. My suspicion is that some of the people who have not been enjoying this are not big sci-fi readers and were not looking for that. That's my guess. The other book that was a surprise is Masquerade by Oo Sangoyomi. I was interested because this was pitched as an African-inspired retelling of Hades and Persephone, and I was like, cool, that sounds like it could be fun. I'll give it a try. And it was not what I was expecting, but it was really good. So one thing about this is I feel like when you're marketing something as a Hades and Persephone retelling, people tend to expect that it's going to be a romance. The majority of the retellings that we've seen have been dark romances. This is not a romance. It's also a very low magic version of fantasy, and it is very political. It follows a young woman who is essentially kidnapped by the ruler of the nation that she lives in, and he wants her to be his bride. There's no underworld. Like I said, it doesn't really have magic. It doesn't have those speculative elements. But what I like about this as a retelling is that the whole story is about the Persephone-coded character regaining her autonomy and finding her power and finding her voice in unexpected ways. It is a very brutal book. I would say I would recommend this much more to fans of things like Joe Abercrombie's work than to people who read like dark fantasy romance. It's a very different audience who would be into it, but it's a great book. So it was a surprise, but in a positive way. Question 7. Who is your favorite new author? This could be a debut author or a new to you author. The author I picked is both, a debut and new to me, obviously. This is Sylvie Cathrall. She wrote A Letter to the Luminous Deep, and I loved this book so much, y'all. It is a very specific book. It is not going to be for everybody, but it was very much for me. It's like Becky Chambers' type of hopeful, cozy sci-fi mixed with a Jane Austen era epistolary novel, right? So this is all told in letters written in this sort of Victorian English style. It's got a super slow burn romance. It's got queer side characters. It's got a little bit of a mystery element. It's very slow paced and character driven. And it's set in this interesting world where most of the earth is underwater and humans have learned how to adapt to it. And the main characters that we're following are the siblings of a burgeoning couple that died in a tragic accident. And they are exchanging letters back and forth and going over the history of how their siblings met and got to know each other and connected and what happened, and then reading through some of the letters left behind by their siblings. So they're slowly forming a friendship with each other while kind of bonding over their grief because of the loss of their siblings. And it's really beautifully written. It's slow paced. I know some people who would love this, and I know people who would hate this and be bored to tears, but if that sounds up your alley, definitely go check it out. I will read whatever else Sylvie Cathrall decides to write, because this was very much my thing. There's going to be more books in the series set in this world. I'm super excited to pick them up. Question 8. Who is your newest fictional crush? I don't feel like I really have fictional crushes in the way that some people do, but I'm gonna go with Rome, who is the hero from Just for the Week, because y'all, this man, he is such a caretaker. He is so kind and thoughtful and very sexy. And so if I was gonna have a fictional crush from things that I've read this year, he's gonna be it. Question 9. Who is your newest favorite character? You know, as I was thinking about this, I decided to go with a character who I just really enjoyed reading from her perspective, and I liked who she was and the journey that she went on. I don't feel like this year I've had any fictional characters that are like living rent-free in my head, and there are some years where I do get that, but this year so far there hasn't been that. However, I did really love Selena from It Waits in the Forest. This is a YA kind of almost gothic feeling, slow burn horror mystery blend that is set in the Caribbean and drawing on Caribbean mythology. And it follows a wounded, prickly young woman who is not an easy person, but there are good reasons for that. And she is persistent in trying to uncover the truth, in trying to get what she wants, even though she sometimes makes mistakes and makes missteps. She is who she is, and I liked her a lot. So this I thought was a fantastic book. I would definitely recommend it, and I liked this character. Question 10. What is a book that made you cry? Hands down, the book that made me cry the most was How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair. When I tell you I was sobbing more than once. This is nonfiction. It is a memoir about growing up under a very strict Rastafarian patriarchal household in Jamaica and dealing with parental abuse and religious trauma and poverty and just a lot of things. It's intense. It's really raw. The writing is absolutely gorgeous. The author was a poet before she wrote this memoir, and I think that bleeds into the writing and the way that she tells her story. I cannot say enough good things about it. There's a lot of content warnings. It is really rough to read at times, but it is beautiful. It's inspiring. I also learned a lot of things that I didn't know about the Rastafari religion and culture. And I think she also does a really good job of handling her complicated feelings about her parents, who were certainly abusive, but who she also loved. It's, I just think, really well written, well observed. Definitely would recommend checking this out if you haven't. Question 11. What is a book that made you happy? This was an easy one. It is the latest book that I've read that was one of my favorites of the year, and that is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. Y'all, this book is so good. You know I love a good cozy fantasy with a romance subplot. This is, I would say, one of the best versions of that I have ever read. It has more of a plot than something like Legends and Lattes. I love Legends and Lattes. Some people criticize it for not having enough stakes or enough of a plot. This, I think, corrects that, but it's still also so cozy and so charming. It has this really sweet slow burn romance with someone who is a childhood friend. It follows a woman who had been a librarian to spell books in the capital city, and she is fleeing because of a political rebellion, and she's stolen all these magical tomes to save them from being destroyed in a fire, and is fleeing to the small island where she grew up, and opens a jam shop that is also secretly a spell shop, even though it's illegal for her to be doing spells or magic. So there is the threat of her being discovered and of the political sort of outside turmoil happening in this nation, but there's also the coziness of the island and the community and the jam and this little bakery that she goes to and her neighbor who she knew as a kid who she's slowly falling for, and there's like mermaids, and it's really, really good. I loved it so much. Easily one of my favorite things, and it made me very happy. All right, question 12. What is the most beautiful book you've bought so far this year or received? Okay, this is a book that I bought a year and a half ago from a tiny little press that does special editions, and y'all, it is the most expensive book I've ever bought, but it was so worth it. It's gorgeous. I will link a unboxing video and flip through that I did up above if you want to go see it, and I'll just show like maybe a screenshot here from that. But this is a gorgeous limited special edition of one of my favorite books of all time, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. The art is stunning. The quality of this book is incredible. It took a long time because the artist was delayed. They do pre-orders that funds the art getting made, the book getting made, and it took a year and a half before I got it in my hands. But y'all, the wait was so worth it. I just cannot say enough good things about it. It is from Curious King Books. Oof, yeah, definitely the most beautiful book. Lastly, question 13, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? So I think the main thing for me here is the books on my reading challenge TBRs that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm actually doing pretty well with this. From nonfiction, I rolled one book over from last year that I didn't get to, which was this book by Bell Hooks. And then I also need to read Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay, so I've got 2 nonfiction books left. In my classics TBR, I also have 2 left. The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I know, I've never read it, we're gonna read it. And The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And then for my series TBR, again, I'm doing pretty well with these, to be honest. I've got the rest of the Dandelion Dynasty series by Ken Liu. This is probably the most daunting thing. This might be a fall series that I will tackle because they're pretty chunky fantasy books, but there's 3 books in that series that I still have to read. Requiem of Silence by L. Penelope. This is another kind of chunky fantasy book, and there's no audiobook. There were audiobooks for the rest of the series and not this, which is why I haven't read it yet, so I just need to buckle down and do it. Imago by Octavia Butler. This will be pretty quick. They're not very long, but it's the final volume of the Xenogenesis series. And then the last 2 books that I have not yet read from N.K. Jemisin, one of my all-time favorite authors, Broken Kingdoms and Kingdom of Gods. And once I've read those, I could maybe make a kind of where to start with N.K. Jemisin video, so expect that to come at some point. So those are the books on my TBR. I'm going to read a lot more than that, but those are the ones that I'm specifically trying to read before the end of the year. In general, I feel like it's been a weird year for content. I've read some really good books. I've read a lot of middle of the road books and not as many books that I specifically disliked, but there's been a few of those. I do feel like myself and other people too, and I don't know how much of it is everything going on in the world or what, but I feel like I've been edging closer to burnout for parts of this year more than I had in previous years, and it seems like that's happening to a lot of people. There could be a lot of reasons for this, like everything happening in Palestine has been horrific. The US election is a lot. And also I've been doing this for like 7 years, and so it's been nice kind of slowing down, taking a step back. I'm, traveling for the summer and taking it a little bit easier and trying to kind of rediscover why I started doing this in the first place and my love of content. So I am really hopeful that kind of slowing down and taking some time to rejuvenate myself is going to be really good for that. So yeah, I'm spending some time thinking about what it is that I want to do going forward and what are the things that get me excited about making content, because I do think it bleeds through. I think people can kind of tell when you're really excited about what you're doing and when you're struggling or not feeling it as much. And I try to keep things interesting and fresh for myself as much as possible. So giving some thought to all of that, but this was a fun little tag video. It's one of the few tags that I ever do. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts on anything I talked about in this video. And for your question of the day, I would love to hear maybe one of your best and worst of the year. What were some highlights or lowlights of your year so far? What are you anticipating in the second half of the year? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.